In this video, we're going to examine the contemporary Electoral College. We recall the Electoral College essentially functions as a point system where each state is worth a given number of points or Electoral College votes, and a candidate needs to accumulate 270 in order to be elected president. Now, we want to think of this as 50 separate elections. Electing a president is not one national election, but rather 50 separate ones. Most states use what's called the unit rule. That means a winner-take-all system of allocating their Electoral College votes. So if your state is worth 10 Electoral College votes and a candidate wins that state by 1 vote, they get all of those Electoral College votes. The total number of votes, the popular vote, does not matter. What happens in a system like this is candidates end up focusing on swing states. Swing states are competitive states that could go one way or the other. Here's how the unit rule works. The electoral votes are awarded as a unit. So in a state like Wisconsin worth 10 electoral votes and Minnesota worth 10 electoral votes, each state has an election, they count up the votes, and whichever candidate gets the most votes, that person gets awarded the 10 points, the 10 electoral college votes. So in Wisconsin, where it looks like in this case there was more Republican voters than Democratic voters, the Republican candidate would win 10 points, 10 electoral college votes from Wisconsin. Similarly, in Minnesota, they add up all the votes in Minnesota. It turns out the Democratic candidate had more votes. They get awarded the 10 points for that state. Winner take all allocation. You get the most votes, you get all of that state's points. Now, there are 2 exceptions to the unit rule. Nebraska and Maine use what's called a proportional allocation of their electoral votes. How that works? Well, they count up all the votes in the state and they give 2 points to the candidate that gets the most vote in the state. So that's the overall winner. Now, they also look at which candidate got the most votes in each congressional district. And for each local winner, they give 1 point. So in a state like Nebraska, instead of giving 5 points to the red team, in this case, they would get 4, and the blue candidate would get 1 electoral vote because of their vote performance in the congressional district level. Now, other states could do this. States like Minnesota, for example, could deviate. They don't have to do the unit rule. They don't have to do winner take all. They could do a proportional format as well. And so hypothetically, it might look something like this. They would add up all the votes and they would see that the blue candidate got the most, but the red candidate got some votes too. So they would split. They would allocate the votes proportionally. And in this case, you might end up with something like 6 points for the blue and 4 points for the red. That way each candidate gets something. Now, why don't more states do this? Well, by adopting a proportional system, by adopting this method, a state might become less important in the eyes of a candidate. In a close election, you want 10 electoral votes. You don't necessarily just want 4 or 6. You want all of them. And so that could diminish a state's importance. They might choose to focus their attention away from a state like Minnesota onto a state like Wisconsin. What would it look like if all states used a proportional allocation? Well, using the 2020 presidential election map, you'd still end up with the same winner. However, the race would have been a lot closer. Why? Well, in states like California and New York, you would see the losing candidate get some electoral college votes. They would get some points, even though they didn't get the most votes in that state. Same with Texas and Florida as well. So each state would be a lot closer to reflect the balance of power within the state. States that are 50-50 in terms of their population balance would see a more equal distribution of points, electoral college votes. The candidates do focus on those competitive states, and we call them swing states because there's the potential to swing back and forth each election. Typically, states like this, like Wisconsin, have an equal number of Democratic and Republican voters. They tend to be evenly distributed throughout that state, not always concentrated in the same spots, mind you. So here's how that would look. In the 2012 election, Barack Obama won the state of Wisconsin with 1.6 million votes, 52% of the vote. However, in the subsequent election, the Republicans won that. And so this is a state that could go back and forth depending on different things. For example, turnout. Notice the Republican vote tally. Donald Trump won the state in 2016 with 1.4 million votes. Mitt Romney lost the state even though he got slightly more votes. So that just gives you an idea of how differential turnout can have an impact. Even things like third-party votes. For example, there was only 40,000 votes cast for third parties in 2012, but almost 200,000 in 2016. So the presence of a third-party candidate on the ballot could be important as well. A problem with the Electoral College vote system, and there are many, is inversion. Now, what is an inversion? Well, an inversion happens when a candidate that gets the most votes does not get the most Electoral College votes, not the most points. And that's happened twice recently. So in the 2000 election, Al Gore got the most votes. They won the popular vote by about 500,000 votes. However, they did not win the Electoral College vote. The Electoral College winner, President George W. Bush, was awarded the presidency. Same thing happened in 2016. This was an Electoral College inversion where the candidate with the fewest votes ends up winning the presidency. Now, in the context of the American Electoral College, that's just how it works. Whereas, in other countries, in a comparative perspective, this would be looked at as completely undemocratic. So that is a challenge of the Electoral College system, that sometimes the less popular candidate will become the president. There's also the problem of ignoring voters, and this kind of speaks to that proportionality argument. In a state like California, these are numbers from the 2016 election. California's were 55 Electoral College votes in that election. Donald Trump got about 4.5 million votes. That's a lot of votes. How many Electoral College votes did he get because of those? 0. It's a winner-take-all state. If California, even if a candidate wins California by one single vote, they get all 55 points. Now, look at some of these other states, Alaska, Wyoming, North Dakota. Here we have the Republican candidate, Donald Trump, getting 200,000, 100,000, 400,000 votes and winning the state. However, in New York City even, not even the whole state of New York, Donald Trump got 500,000 votes. That's more votes than he got in West Virginia and any of those other states. How many points did he get? 0, because it's a winner-take-all state. And so the same logic applies to Texas. It's a very close state. The Democrats do quite well, but they get 0 points for that. The Republican candidate usually wins and gets all of the Electoral College votes. So if you happen to be in a very populous state on the losing side, you don't get any benefit out of the Electoral College system for that. And so it tends to ignore minority party voters. So just to recap, here are some problems with the Electoral College. Of course, it ignores the popular vote, and that gives the problem of inversions, where the less popular candidate will actually get elected president. The winner-take-all system of awarding Electoral College votes is a problem. This emphasizes the importance of swing states. Now, that lets candidates focus their campaigns very, very narrowly. The idea of the Electoral College system was to get candidates to have to campaign across the entire country, but that's not what they do. They just focus on swing states. Here's some data from the National Popular Vote Compact. In 2016, almost 70% of the campaign events were only in 6 states. 2020, almost all of the campaign events were in 12 states. And so the Electoral College focuses candidates very narrowly on swing states and ignore many voters in other states. These are just a few challenges with the Electoral College system.